Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and it looks like I'm first up. I think by dint of the alphabet, Baldry comes slightly before Burr. So for my update from the NAR meetings, I'm hoping I don't overlap with our other reporters, because a lot of us cross over on some meetings and what have you, but I'll try and give you as thorough an update as possible. First off, some good news. I was one of our members representing us in the Commercial Leadership Forum, where we were awarded 4-star accreditation by NAR. We have people, particularly Carla Joseph and Albert, our executive officer, have put a lot of work into getting us that accreditation. And unfortunately, neither of them are in the room when I give them the credit, but tell them that I did say that. So that was a fantastic piece of news. Some other committees that I went to. Actually, I'm going to skip forward to one which is a pretty crucial update, and that is the class action litigation. How many of you are aware of the class action lawsuit that names NAR and a number of larger brokers companies as well? A few hands going up. The very, very quick and rough synopsis is there are 2 lawsuits, one in Chicago and one in Kansas City. They both allege pretty much the same thing. Mr. Lieber. They both allege pretty much the same thing, and that is essentially that the NAR's rule that states that when you're a listing broker, you have to offer some form of compensation to the buyer's broker is anti-competitive. Now, that's wrong. You know that. I know that. There's nothing that sets what that compensation could be. It could be theoretically as low as $1. It could be anything higher than that. Obviously, there's no such thing as a standard commission. Another part of their argument is that with the growth in technology, other industries have seen their commissions get lower. They point particularly to travel agents whose commissions have dropped off dramatically. They neglect to point out that in some industries those commissions have got those fees or commissions have got higher, like attorneys' fees have skyrocketed despite certain technological advances. And they have one argument that I think is fantastic, and not because it's a good one. They claim that in Europe, estate agents or their equivalent throughout the rest of Europe are paid significantly less. Now, this is true. Unfortunately, they do significantly less as well. My brother is trying to buy a property in London at the moment, and his experience has been an absolute waking nightmare because he's not properly represented. One estate agent covers both sides of the transaction. They're not paid an awful lot. They don't do an awful lot of work. He's had to do a lot of his legwork. So yes, they're paid less, but you get significantly less for it. So that argument is absolutely laughable. In terms of where the lawsuits are at the moment, one of them, and I'm trying to remember which one, so NAR filed a motion to dismiss in both cases. In one case, I think it was Kansas City, the judge has basically said she wants to hear more evidence, so she did not grant the motion to dismiss. Chicago, they have not made that decision yet. That is going to happen on December 12th. But if Kansas City has not granted the motion to dismiss, the likelihood of Chicago doing it is relatively minimal, if realistic. The next phase in the process is called discovery. That basically means that both sides start demanding documents, interviews, all the information they possibly can from the other side. Fundamentally, the point of discovery is to make the other side's life absolutely miserable and attempt to figure out as many angles as you can towards your argument from their information. So if you see any NAR staff at any point in your travels who might be under that, sympathize with them. It's not a fun process. After discovery, it's going to depend on what's turned up by both sides as to what the next steps are. So that is very briefly where the class action litigation is at the moment. Any questions on that before I move on? Nope? Okay, fantastic. Some other committees that were attended. One that I went to is Federal Taxation Committee, which I get excited about, and I realize I'm in the minority there. There were some really useful updates from that as I thumb through my bits of paper until I find the right one. There we go. Shockingly, since the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act went into effect, the number of people itemizing and filing their tax returns has dropped off, and it's dropped off dramatically. Likewise, the number of people claiming mortgage interest deduction has dropped off dramatically because people aren't filing. It was one of the major reasons why you would file an itemized deduction. Again, if you're not aware, the standard deduction has gone up significantly. There's also been a reduction in mortgage interest deduction. There's the sole cap marriage penalty. If you can claim up to $10,000 in state and local taxes. If you're an individual and if you get married, you can claim up to $10,000 in state and local taxes, despite the fact there's two of you in the household. So a conclusion that we can come to, and I'm not going to debate the merits of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in its entirety, that would take a whole other day. But we can fairly safely conclude that one of the results of that act is some of the incentives to home ownership have been diluted or have even gone away. Now, federal taxation has been tasked with trying to find other ways to incentivize home ownership through the tax code, because I mean this is the American dream. That's what you and I sell every single day, and it's what our clients believe in. But the tax code helps people become homeowners. Mortgage interest deduction prior to the Tax Cut and Jobs Act helped people become homeowners with the tax benefits that came with home ownership. So the Federal Taxation Committee is trying to work on ways to re-incentivize home ownership through the tax code. They haven't completed that task. One of the things that they have stated all year is they're not going to rush out proposals just for the sake of rushing out proposals. They'd rather get it right. And one thing I have to make absolutely clear, NAR has not, and to my knowledge will not change their position that they do defend the mortgage interest deduction. It is still beneficial to a large number of households, even if it's not beneficial to as many households as it was previously. There are a couple of proposals that came out of federal taxation in terms of motions. One is to push for legislation that offers a capital gains reduction to investors who sell a property to a first-time home buyer. So, for example, if I own a single-family home as an investor and I put it on the market, there may be tax consequences, capital gains tax consequences if I've held on to it for a very long time, certainly, that could be mitigated with this legislation if I was to sell to a first-time home buyer versus a second, third, or fourth-time home buyer or another investor. The idea is to try and free up some of the inventory, particularly some of the inventory that was picked up during the Great Recession when a lot of institutional investors snapped up single-family homes. Those hadn't come onto the market in a big way. The other was to encourage down payment savings through either allowing people to take more money out of their IRA penalty-free, or through savings plans similar to 529 college plans. If you're saving for your children's college, like I am, good luck. But there are those savings plans that have tax benefits for the amount of money that you put into those plans. So the idea is to create something similar for your down payment, for your home purchase. Those are some of the major meetings that I went to. There are a bunch of others, but we do have a number of other speakers to come, and I see Bob's hand up. So I presume there's a question.
It's a question. We used to have no tax or capital gains when you sold your personal residence. Have they brought that up? Because we've lost 1/3 of our market, which is the move-up buyer, because they have to pay so much income tax when they sell. And that's one of the biggest detriments to our industry.
So that wasn't brought up specifically in that meeting, but I know that committee has had a working group working on mortgage interest deduction and the other tax consequences to home ownership. I don't know exactly what discussions have happened in that working group prior to that meeting, and as I said, that working group is trying to come up with proposals most likely next year, that there would be a slightly more comprehensive package. So the short answer is I don't know whether that has come up on that or not.
You need to propose that to them.
Well, as it happens, I learned a couple of weeks ago that I'm actually going to be on the Federal Taxation Committee at NAR next year, so I will be in a rather good position to bring that up, so thank you, Bob. Any other questions? In that case, I will yield to our next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy, and good morning, everyone. And I, too, have very good news from the global front. Our association has won the Diamond Award from the NAR Global Program. So here is our nice flag that we won. And we were recognized at NAR. And I am currently the chair of NAR's Global Alliances Advisory Board. And I attended a few meetings at NAR. And together with me, we had quite a number of our members who came to the NAR annual convention. So for those who had gone, could you please stand up and be recognized? Thank you for going. We also had two members of the global committees. One of them is Helen Marston. She is a member of the CIPS Advisory Board. And the other member is Ling Chow. She's a member of the NAR Global Alliances and Business Board Committee. So we have three members of our association that are members of committees that went there and represented you. So the international attendees, we had over 1,600 international members that attended the conference from over 66 countries. And these are tentative numbers. The final numbers will be available in about 2 weeks. So these are tentative numbers. And the global meetings were attended by NAR Global Ambassadors, NAR Global Coordinators, Ambassador Association representatives, international and domestic guests who were interested in international real estate. And we had several meetings. The one that I attended was the one that I chaired, which was the Global Alliances Advisory Board. During the meeting, we had speakers to talk about how we can encourage more international attendees from their countries to attend our annual conferences. And also we had a panel discussion as to what each country globally, what we can do to help them. Because some of them needed MLS services and how we can provide them with information as to how to set up MLS and the things that the global bilateral partners needed from NAR. So the global ambassadors are the ones who help them. Global ambassadors are members of NAR domestically who are appointed by the NAR president to represent them as liaisons to countries that we have a bilateral agreement with. So those, we used to call them president's liaison. Now they're called global ambassadors. And then we have global coordinators who oversees the global ambassadors in a region. So we have Asia, we have Eastern Europe, we have South America, among a few. One of the things that we discussed that I think would be of interest to you is the H-2B visa. Do you know what that is? H-2B visa is a temporary worker visa program and that's available to a foreign worker, and it permits the employer to hire foreign workers to come to the United States to perform temporary non-agricultural services or labor on a one-time, seasonal, or intermittent basis, such as waiters and lifeguards. And the H-2B program requires the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Labor to consult and coordinate with other appropriate agencies before admitting H-2B non-immigrant visa holders. There is currently a cap on the number of foreign workers who may receive H-2B status during each year. So this year, the cap was 66,000 a year, and those visas were given out within a month. They were gone within a month. So the US additionally added 30,000 more, and those visas were gone within a month also. So right now, NAR would like to position ourselves for the temporary worker visa program to encourage all employers who participate in the H-2B visa program to strive for the highest levels of responsibility and accountability to the H-2B visa holders who are in and they're employed, and comply with all appropriate laws, regulations, and guidance associated with the program. And this is a motion that Global Business and Alliances Committee took to the Board of Directors last Monday. They wanted the employers to be more responsible, and therefore hopefully we can get more H-2B visa granted, or the quota, make it higher than 66,000 a year. So this motion was put to the Board of Directors and it was passed. And another thing was the EB-5 program, and currently we used to have 500,000 was the investment amount. Now it is 900,000. So it's not, there's nothing concrete yet, but NAR is going to work towards reducing the amount from 900,000 to a certain number that is more reasonable. Because it used to be 500,000, and now it's 900,000, so that's quite a bit of a raise. So, what else is there? Okay, so as of now, investments from the EB-5 has brought in $3.1 billion, and it has created 65,000 jobs. So as I've said, now then it's a $900,000 investment from 500,000, and that makes it more, making this program more difficult to use. And it restricts the use of the, this increase restricts the use of the EB-5 program. So NAR is going to push legislation to reduce this $900,000 down. And this 900,000, it applies to one person. It used to be for a whole family, and it applies to only one person. So NAR is going to push legislation to change that to go back to the family. I think this is about it. There are some international real estate conferences coming up. There is one in Jamaica next month. And then they also have one in Serbia, in Belgrade, Serbia, in April 2020. And there's another one in Dubai. This is one that we had attended by two members of our association, Francis and Linda Lee. They went to one this year that was held in Tokyo, Japan. And this next year is going to be held in Dubai. And I heard that it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be a lot of education sessions also. So think about it. Perhaps our association can go on a trip to Dubai next year. That's about it. That's the end of my report.
That's right.
All right, thank you, Nancy. Well, per usual, a lot of the stuff I have is pretty dry. I'm going to try and skim over that real quick. We're dealing with flood insurance again, which they make us do every year, if not every other year. It's just a way for them to make us expend a little political capital, and we know they're going to do it in the end, but we still have to put up the fight. Short sale debt forgiveness, it's been 10 years, so that's going to expire. That was 2009, and you recall during that period we had all the short sales, and then the person doing the short sale, the seller, was getting a 1099 for the debt forgiveness portion. And so we were able to successfully lobby against that. Now that's coming due, and we're going to be hard pressed to fight that again. Just to touch again on what Nick was talking about, he was talking about the SALT taxes. So they want to get away with the mortgage interest deduction, and what they did was they attacked it from two sides. They increased the standardized deduction, and then they put a cap on the top end, so that what we call SALT, but that's the state and local income tax. So you can only deduct $10,000. So they really squeezed it. So like he said, fewer and fewer people are using this deduction now. And we know what their next step is. Their next step is to say, well, not very many people use it, and the ones that do are only the rich, so we might as well get rid of it. One of the things that we're trying to fight on is that it's $10,000 if you're single, and it's $10,000 if you're married. So we feel that it should be $20,000 if you're married, and you shouldn't be penalized for being married. But you're laughing. You think it's penalty enough? So, anyways, again, we're up against the battle that only the rich benefit from that $20,000 SALT, the state and local income tax deduction. So we'll see where that goes. And then again, Nick also mentioned this one too, the home ownership tax credits. So what we're doing is we're trying to incentivize home ownership through other channels. Since we see that this one is going away or not popular. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to create something like an IRA account or an HSA account that you would be able to put money into every month, grow tax-free, and then that money would be earmarked for your residence. One of the, well, I'll come back to that. A couple of interesting little court cases that they were talking about, and stop me, Nick, if you mention these, but one of them was Nick versus Scott Township, and so what had happened there was the township council decided that if you had either a cemetery or graves or a burial ground, or if somebody was buried on your property, you had to leave access 7 days a week during daylight to that property, to that site. So it kind of sounded okay at first glance, but then it also gave them the right to go on your property to see if there was any burials. So what ended up happening was this person, Nick, Mrs. Nick, no relation.
Not my wife.
This one's K-Nick.
What a coincidence.
So she had 90 acres, and they wanted to, she wanted to develop it, and they went out on her property and they determined that she had, somebody was buried on her property, unbeknownst to her. And not only did they have the, you had to provide access 7 days a week during daylight hours, but then you had to also grant an easement. So you could see where this greatly affected her ability to do anything to use or to develop her property. So what she did was she went to the court, the state court, and the state court said, well, yeah, you're kind of impacted, but we haven't even fined you yet. And the fines are in the hundreds of dollars per day. So we haven't fined you yet. So until there's really been a harm, or you can't sue. So she said, okay, well, I can't sue in the state court. So she went to the federal court. And the federal court told her, you can't sue in the federal court because you have to sue in the state court first. So she was in this catch-22, and so that became the new case. So she took that up to the, I think it went to the Supreme Court actually, and they determined that if the state court won't hear your case, the federal court will. So that was that is a long way to get to a win for property owners' rights. Yeah, not too many wins, so that's a good. We're taking where we can get them. And then another funny one was just the dusky gopher frog, because everybody wants to hear about the dusky gopher frog. It's a frog that's a protected species in Louisiana, and the EPA came in and said you can't develop your property because it looks like it's a nice breeding ground for the dusky gopher frog. So there was no evidence that this land had ever had this species, this protected species, but yet they were still coming in. So it was another example of government overreach, and it looks like they're going to win that one. And if I have a minute, and I think I do, I'm going to veer off and talk about a couple of updates on the local level while I've got the mic. So for rent control, we all know that the state passed rent control. Well, the state came in at 5% plus CPI, which is 2.5% to 3% around here, and they put in a provision that says if you already have rent control, such as LA, the stricter of the two will be enforced. So now a lot of the rent control advocates are not satisfied with the state's rent control because it's 7.5% to 8%. So they're going around city to city and they're trying to get more strict ones, more strict rent control. They came to Alhambra, and what they're doing now is there was a case or a window for landlords to evict prior to the January 1st implementation of 1482, which is the statewide rent control. So some landlords, and these are the landlords that don't make us look good, unfortunately, but they did. They went out and they started evicting all their tenants in advance. So this group caught wind of that, and they're going around city by city, and they're trying to implement a law which is basically early implementation of 1482, which means that you won't be able to, before January 1st, get around the law. So it would basically go into effect now and not January 1st. In Alhambra, we had, it's kind of a circus when you go to these meetings. They typically bus in a lot of people that are from out of the area. They all have the same kind of hard luck story, and but they're compelling, and you feel sorry for them, and they're boisterous and outnumber us. So Susie was there, Nick was there. But we at the end really felt that for what it would take us to try and defeat this for a 6-7 week benefit wasn't worth it for organized real estate. But that was kind of the approach we took. So we're dealing with that. And then the last thing I'll talk about is Better Housing for Long Beach is a group of apartment owners that is suing, they named the state of California, the city of Long Beach, and also Gavin Newsom, the governor. And what they are trying to do is, instead of going after rent control in its entirety, they're trying to go after the just cause eviction portion of it. Because as they say, it's a clear transfer of wealth. There's no guarantee that the person that's receiving the benefits uses it for new housing. They may go on a vacation. There's no means testing, so you can have somebody who's living in a unit that makes more than the landlord, and yet the landlord's forced to pay them. So they're going after that, and it'll be up to our board to determine whether or not we want to be party to that. But yes, Bob.
If I understand the just cause, if I evicted you for not paying rent, I still have to pay you a relocation fee?
No.
No.
So the just cause would be an immediate family member is moving into the unit. If you're going to do a major remodel of the unit, things like that. But if you evict them with cause, public nuisance, they're getting arrested, police keep coming out, they stop paying rent, those things, then you don't have to compensate them.
But you do have to go through the legal process, which will cost you as
Right, you have
much
to
as
go to court
compensating
in order to do
them.
that.
Right, they live there for 6 months for free.
Yeah.
And to hit your other point with regard to capital gains, so that is a good point. What CAR has taken the angle that it's the property taxes that are keeping people in their homes, and that's why they've gone after this affordability. But it would be interesting to really kind of research and see how much. There still was RC or RS 121, right? The one where you get $250. Each spouse gets $250.
Right. Yeah.
So, and maybe that's not enough anymore.
That's not enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, the challenge there is convincing people in the states in the middle that that's not enough, because for them that's plenty.
All right, thank you very much.
Pressure on for a good report. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Well, I am honored to stand here before you. I applied and was appointed to be a CAR. I was a CAR appointed NAR director for next year, appointed by our 2020 president, Jeannie Radzik. So attending the meeting this year was quite an honor, anticipating my next year responsibilities to you. On behalf of Tom Berge, who is the NAR director for our board, I'm going to do a report on behalf of Tom and I for the directors. So there was a lot of discussion and conversations and meetings regarding the MLS Statement 8.0. And I'll just kind of read what the vote came out. The NAR Board of Directors took a step to bolster brokerage cooperation on Monday, passing MLS Statement 8.0, also known as the Clear Cooperation Policy. This policy requires listing brokers who are participating in a multiple listing service to submit their listing to the MLS within 1 business day of marketing the property to the public. MLSs have until May 1st, 2020 to implement the policy. Essentially, if you're marketing the policy on the internet, signs, anything you're doing to marketing, you have 24 hours to get it into the MLS. And there's a lot of discussion, a lot of back and forth, but it passed unanimously. Also regarding code of ethics, it was changed a couple years ago that our license was every 4 years, that remains. Our code of ethics was every 2 years that we had to do. The board of directors approved to change NAR's code of ethics training requirement to 3 years. This will stay in place. The current cycle we're in right now is December 31st, 2020 to December 31st, 21. So the next cycle will begin January 1st, 2022 and end December 31st, 2024. This is supposed to make it easier. I guess boards, associations across the state or across the country do their license renewal every 2 years. Code of ethics is not always included in that. In California, our license renewals are every 4 years, and now your code of ethics, effective, depending when your license expires, in 22, beginning January 1st, 22, if your license is in that period, there'll be a 3-year, you renew your license every 3 years. I'm sure Albert and his staff will have a fun time figuring this out, but in the end, the responsibility lies on you of when your renewals are. So stay up to date on that, because I know you get warnings and then you're deactivated. Core standards, Board of Directors approved a proposal that NAR adopt customized core standards for state associations. Our board currently follows that with CAR, and that will maintain, and we're always compliant with our Board of Directors and working with Albert and staff. Pro standards, a couple things on that. The Board of Directors adopted a new standard of practice under Article 3 that realtors may not refuse to cooperate on the basis of a broker's race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. They also deleted standard practice 12.2, and amended standard practice 12-1 as part of the ongoing efforts to review the update the Code of Ethics to ensure adequate protection of consumers, clarity of requirements, and legal defensibility. Also, the Board of Directors extended the California Association of Realtors lateral discipline pilot program, except the California Association will not be required to make further reports to NAR regarding the program. Nick and Lee touched on the federal tax policy that was updated. Bylaw change. The Board of Directors voted to eliminate Article 6 of the NAR bylaws concerning misconduct. The reason? NAR updated Code of Conduct, and sexual harassment policy adopted by the board in 2018 sets forth a comprehensive way to ensure complaints of unacceptable behavior are received, investigated, and resolved, and thus eliminates the usefulness of the bylaw. So that kind of covers the Board of Directors. I also serve as a member of the State and Local Policy Committee, which plays an active role in the process of updating policies. We had 6 working groups, and on that we cover from rental housing, public education. The committee I serve on, or the team I served on, is confiscation, changing policy, updating policy on confiscation of real property, tax exempt properties, and property rights. So due to time, I won't go into all those details, but if you want to have coffee, my treat, I'd love to go over with you. It's kind of really fun stuff. And I also have the opportunity, being part of the State and Local Policy Committee, and I serve as the NAR committee representative to CAR for local government. I attended a neighborhood revitalization tour in San Francisco, which was really fun. We started at the Twitter building, which for 30 years had been a vacant building, serving as a homeless encampment. And they worked to revitalize the whole neighborhood, and took a walk over to Hayes the Hayes area, where just a change in the neighborhood, freeways closing and now turning into little communities with little pop-up stores and restaurants. There is a huge battle with the residents that don't want additional housing in that area. So it's been like a 7-year battle, and where they're trying to put in almost like 200 new units. So the community's making the best use of the space right now. But again, there's some great learnings from the community as they're going through this. But some great revitalization is taking place in San Francisco. They'll be closing streets in the area to make them car-free zones. So some great ideas to bring back to our local communities and just kind of moving forward. So it's a great time at NAR and representing you. And if you have any questions, let me know. Thank you.